We have an opportunity to do things we've never done before. And I very much believe that we can take what was good about meeting in person, because let's be honest, it wasn't always 100% great. I like to say we found ways to make it weird over lunch and in the hallways and around the water coolers, right? And so, and then, we went online and we found a lot of ways to make that real weird, but there were a lot of good things too. And certainly there's a lot of good things about being in person. So can we just take the good from both, get rid of the bad from both, and let's make a new world moving forward?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Flow Over Fear podcast, where it is our mission to help you to rise above fear and realize your ultimate potential in leadership and life. I'm your host, Adam Hill, and it is my goal to share with you the human side of high performance. My guests share their experience with fear, anxiety, struggle, challenge, and most importantly, despite all of it, how they rose above it to achieve incredible results. So, if you're ready to rise up, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Flow Over Fear. I am so glad you're here. Thanks for joining us. I have an amazing guest today, and we're going to talk about all things virtual. Her name is Kassy LaBorie, and she is a professional speaker. She's an author and the original virtual training hero on a mission to rid the world of boring slide reading lectures and passive virtual participants. She's the founder of and principal consultant at Kassy LaBorie Consulting, certifying L&D professionals to become virtual trainers, designers, and producers around the globe each day. She has served as the director of virtual training services at Dale Carnegie and Associates, and was responsible for building an online training platform that scaled to $4 million in just 4 years. Kassy is the author of 2 books, including Interact and Engage, 75 plus activities for virtual training, meetings, and webinars, of which she's the co-author, and producing virtual training, meetings, and webinars. Thanks for joining me, Kassy. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. It's fun to listen to all that. You go, wow,
isn't it?
Did I do that?
Right. It's amazing. And I love reading those. I love reading people's bios at first. And I know it sounds, when I read it, it's like, okay, well, I'm reading, but I want to make sure I get everybody's awesomeness in there, because it truly is something. I mean, to hear your amazing accomplishments before we're getting started in this is I think something we want to get into. And I'd love to dive into how you got started in all of this, because you're in this space that has popped up and just exploded over the last few years for a number of reasons, obviously, but you've been in it for a very long time. In that virtual space. So can you I'd love to hear your backstory. How did you get into it? How did you grow up, and what brought you into this industry?
Well, I'd like to thank RuPaul for deciding to partner with WebEx in the late 90s. WebEx did a Super Bowl halftime commercial, or Super Bowl, maybe it wasn't halftime, it was a commercial. And they partnered with RuPaul and said, meetings have got to be a real drag, and the other one was, we've got to start meeting like this. And I used to live in San Francisco. I'm now in Western New York, but I was driving down the 101 freeway in San Francisco, and I saw that sign with RuPaul, and it was the late 90s. And I thought, I want to work there. They gave me the boa and the beach ball, and I was on my way. I was a Microsoft trainer at the time, so I was already used to teaching people how to use software. And, during that time in the Silicon Valley, it's like cool Silicon Valley job. Right. I didn't know that it was going to become, what would form the basis for my whole career. I did not know that at all. And working as a trainer, working in learning and development, it was, people like to hire you because you know the thing. And I didn't know the thing. I got hired because I thought I'm going to learn the thing and it's going to be cool. And I just remember going, whoa, what is this? And when I got in there, I realized pretty quickly, this is going to be something that's probably going to change the way that we work. And I had no idea in the late 90s that it would also become sort of a force of change for how we live as well. And it just was so amazing to think about it and go back to that. Because really, honestly, at that time, it was like, cool new software. Let me show you how to use it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's amazing. I mean, because it seems like you've gone through a number of transformations in that, having started in 1999 and seeing that first ad But there was other things that happened in the tech industry within those next couple of years. How did that affect you working in that industry?
Well, for so long, even though there's big things that happened, it was not until March of 2020 that everyone really went all in on it. We had before that people paying attention at certain levels, but they still weren't ready for it. And you could argue that people are still not totally ready for it. They've been more forced into it.
Sure.
But in 99, 9/11 had not happened yet. And I was actually driving to work, talking to my colleagues who were on the East Coast. I was on West Coast time at that time. And I was driving in the morning, and that was happening. And I remember all of us gathering in the offices at WebEx and going, wow, the work that we do is probably going to become more important right now.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
And it did, but then we got back to normal regarding how we meet and how we travel at that time. And then, people kept on not listening. I mean, honestly, I spent my whole career going, hey, guys, listen to me. This can be great. This can be a great way to work too. And because I work in learning and development, we can do training like this. It'll be okay. Everyone's like, yeah, maybe we'll listen. We should, or somebody forced us. It really wasn't until the lockdowns that all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, we have to do this. And also, I should point out that my mother finally understood clearly what I do for work.
Oh, yeah. She didn't understand until then,
she's
right?
like, you make websites, right? I'm like, no, I don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that was probably the most, obviously the most instrumental transformation in the last few years was COVID and the lockdowns. But even since then, you see outspoken people like Elon Musk or others that are saying, no, we got to bring everybody back into the office.
Yeah.
Do you see that? Do you see that trend coming back, or do you see us going, or do you see some kind of equilibrium being struck? And how are you approaching this next evolution?
I definitely want to be on like leading the mission or the message that it's going to be okay. We have an opportunity to do things we've never done before. And I very much believe that we can take what was good about meeting in person, because let's be honest, it wasn't always 100% great.
Right.
I like to say we found ways to make it weird over lunch and in the hallways and around the water coolers, right? And so, and then, we went online and we found a lot of ways to make that real weird, but there were a lot of good things too. And certainly there's a lot of good things about being in person. So can we just take the good from both, get rid of the bad from both, and let's make a new world moving forward? And I think that what you see with people who want to go back in the office is that they're just not there yet. They're leaning back on their laurels, what they know to be true, and they haven't yet discovered what that, secret thing is going to be if it's secret. They still have to keep working on it, and I think they need examples. And what I want to help people realize is, listen, we just need to get more intentional about why we do meet in person, because we have this opportunity now. We have a lot of wonderful technology that lets people gather. We're able to expand our reach and let people meet together in ways that they decide are going to be best for what they need to do. And so let's just use that and not say just because we are in person, it is better than, and just because we are online, it is a 70% experience.
Right.
It's really mindset, right? You talk about your mindset as you approach fear. And I think that's what it is. People are afraid of not being successful. And so let me go back on what I know I can do to make it work. And that wasn't in the online days.
So do you think that's the root of the fear of everybody with regard to going to virtual, is just it's a fear of failure? Is that where it all kind of stems from?
I think that maybe not all of it, but some. I mean, I've been asking long before I needed to ask. I would ask people, what are you worried about? Like, hi, I'm here to help you learn Zoom or WebEx or Teams or whatever you're using. What are you worried about? And it falls under two categories, and it still does to this day. The first one is, I am afraid I will not engage my audience. And then the second one is, I am afraid of this technology breaking and I don't know how to fix it. In some form, it's those two things. It's the people and the tech. And then, that translates to, I don't think I'm going to be able to get my teams to work together to be productive. to be able to collaborate so that I can have a successful business.
Yeah.
So I don't know, is all of it fear? I don't know, but it's certainly a lot of it is based in the concern that we're not going to do well. I'm going to look bad. I'm going to perform poorly. I just can't do this.
Yeah.
How many trainers have I worked with where this is what happens? Hey, everyone. Hey, guys. Welcome to class. Can you see my slides? Okay, one person can. Great. All of you can. We're going to just get through this. If we were in person, I would have had lunch brought in, but because we're online, I just cut all the activities. I'll just read through my slides. I know you don't really want to be here, so let's just get this done.
Oh yeah, sounds like all of them.
Yeah. And and why are they doing that? Because they don't know another way. They don't know how to make it work. And when we went online in March of 2020, we had to do everything online. Mm-hmm. Book clubs. My kid graduated high school online. Wow. I know.
Wow.
I know. So, and I only have one, by the way. That was my one shot. Right. I'm mad.
Well, it brings up an interesting point too. I mean, I'm looking at all of the benefits of going virtual. I mean, we sent from our company, we had 150 employees. Some of them were essential. Some were manufacturing. Some of them, were driving trucks and things like that. So they had to keep going out in the world. But for many of us, those that were in the office, we went home, and ultimately we made the decision to keep those people at home for the most part. But that was met by, and I just had this conversation with another guest, Chesley Lundy, who did a generational study, and it was a very generational thing where, the younger generation kind of took to it really quick. And generally speaking, I mean, there were kind of mixtures in both, but there was a lot of, pushback and saying, now we can't work that way. We can't work that way. Right. How do we overcome that? And to the point are there activities like a graduation that, we need to have in person, and how do we discern between the two, like what we need and what we don't? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it is driven by what is available and what the circumstances are, and so it'd be interesting as we see people deciding what's going to be best about being in person and how do I go about being intentional. But the biggest thing from what I have seen with people is that they just don't know how to use whatever technology it is that's gathering people together. Mm-hmm. They just don't know how to really use it. And so if we can, I have a principle, if you will. It's called, I do this. I say, you got to learn the tech, learn the heck out of the tech, and then use the tech. And then guess what? Get over the tech. It's all tech, but we have to somehow just get rid of it at the same time. It's like when we first all went to cell phones or mobile phones, they were novel, and then they were, I don't think that will ever work. And then that's, look where we are now. We got used to it. We'd call people for no reason just because we had a new phone. And now they're, I'm surprised they're not embedded on us at this point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that whole cell phone thing, it's interesting that, we still call them phones because that's just one single activity that this pocket device does for us. Out of many.
Right? It's not a phone anymore. It's what is it? I don't know. I don't want to know.
We don't want to know. It's our mind control device, right?
The tech is a big part of it. We have to get people comfortable with the tech. So there needs to be this mindset shift that tech is not in the way. Mm-hmm. And then we need to be willing to play with it and use it in all the ways, in everything. I've done so many baby showers and birthday parties and retirement parties. Those were all done before the lockdown. And helping people get comfortable in that way, finding ways to truly connect with each other in ways that are meaningful, help the technology to get out of the way, to get in the proverbial back seat, if you will. What was important is that we met and we connected and we did that. My daughter's graduation was amazing, actually. It wasn't what we thought it was going to be as she was growing up. But it enabled, we have family in Canada and across all of the US, and they were all there. Mm-hmm. And I don't think all of them would have been able to come if we were doing it in person. It would have just been a few. So it was really special, actually.
Yeah. So there's good and bad that comes from it, obviously. So the good is, you have more accessibility. And as far as, so kind of going back to when this kind of started to take off, there were a couple of events that triggered the movement, so to speak. So obviously the Super Bowl ad with RuPaul kind of got you into the game a little bit. But you mentioned 9/11 too. Obviously that shut down transportation, so we had to do more virtually. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about how that iteration went, how we moved more toward digital, and how that evolved through the course of the next, say, 20 years or so?
Yeah, it was a sort of slow, it never went as fast as it did until just recently. It was more like, here's another technology we can use, like in the way that we became more open to not having to have a physical signature, like DocuSign slowly came about, and, just sort of getting more used to having electronic copies of things. And when people started to realize that, we had the economic turn happen in the mid 2000s as well, right?
Right.
That is another place, because then you start looking at an online version of things as a budget concern because of how expensive travel is, not only to do the travel, but to be out of work or off the clock at the time that you need to do the travel. So time lost, right? So that happened as well. And I think people just started seeing we can be effective like this if we try. Right. But it wasn't until we had to that people said, okay, we're really going to do it. It was always just some of the companies. It was a lot, I shouldn't say some, it was a lot, but they weren't all in. It'd be like one division in the giant company that had decided we're really going to go for this. Yeah. And it takes time. And every single organization that I have worked with, every single learning and development team, they would start off as, okay, they're making us do this. Can we be effective? We'd go through the whole process of learning the technology, bonding and connecting with each other, and then getting better at it. And then on the other side of it, we'd have some experiences that we both loved and didn't love. But then once we got on the other side of that whole story, people started to really understand and define work-life balance and what it meant to not be commuting and to not be, for lack of a better word, wasting time going to work and instead spending time on quality work, because what this would enable us to do. Yeah. And when you're over there, you kind of don't want to go back to, I have to sit in the car for an hour and then do that on the way back too. That's 2 hours for the whole day. Right. That alone is probably one of the biggest changes. I'm sure that you saw it with your company and what was happening.
We did. Yeah. And I mean, there was certainly this, certainly for me, I was commuting an hour each way. And so were many of our employees. And so taking that, gave us 2 hours of our day back. I found just in that process, I'm sleeping better. I'm already more productive. I can already take control of my own schedule. I can be more present with my family. Yeah. And I think those were the positives that came out of it. And not everybody saw it that way, which was the interesting thing. It was like, more time, I think everything kind of seemed like it amplified, right? If there was a bad situation at home, that amplified. If there was bad, so not that technology caused that, but it certainly led to greater visibility into that. It seemed right? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, because not everybody has an equal setup or equal access, and it's difficult. And some people go to work to get away from whatever else might be happening in their lives. So there's considerations that we have to take and put into place for people and help them. It didn't happen overnight for me that I would be comfortable working online. My journey is more about learning how to make the technology work and then realizing that life could be lived like this too. And I don't in any way live my whole life online. I do. Sure. It's just like all the different things I allow it to supplement and give me access to.
Yeah. Well, that leads to an interesting question too, is you mentioned that it took you some time to get accustomed to working online. How did that develop for you? What did that look like? And how long did it take you to get comfortable with that?
And you could argue that there's things I'm still doing to get comfortable, but it was less about working online and more about working from my own space that I had to put together, and I saw it happening so much when all of us went home, because many of us were working on corners in the dining room table, right?
Right.
And what I had to do, and I had that in the beginning too, because I was working for WebEx and I lived in an apartment in San Francisco and commuted an hour into WebEx office, where we were telling people that they should work online, but none of us were. The irony.
Oh, that's great.
The irony. I know.
Yeah.
But I mean, it wasn't even a thing, it wasn't, we didn't have any part of our lives really online that much in the late 90s. I mean,
Right.
the Facebook didn't catch on till it was 2004. So I still had 5 years until we were going to have personal life online more. We were still I think MySpace was 2003. So
Yeah.
yeah. So it wasn't like I was even thinking of it. And so when my team moved from San Jose, California up to Sacramento, California, they offered, because I wasn't going to move to Sac. When you live in San Francisco, you're not going to move into Sacramento.
Right.
I love Sac. I went to high school in Sac, but yeah. But I wasn't going to move. And so I was like, well, I guess, do I no longer have a job? Are you asking me to move? And I'd been there several years, and they said, no, you can keep your job. And I got to go home at that point.
Oh,
and
wow.
so I was in the corner in the living room. We had to make a space, and that whole thing of just learning what it was going to be like. And then, then my little one came along. And so I'm figuring out, like, I couldn't watch her at the same time that I'm running online sessions. So then now how's the childcare going to work, and what's that going to look like? And it's different and things. So just learning the space and learning the boundaries, because the beautiful thing about, quote, going to work is that you leave the house at a certain time and you make a physical transition that is very clear to, I have now arrived at the place where I will do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're at home, and I would say early on in my working from home career, if that's a career, I did not have clear boundaries, and I was working all the time.
Yeah.
And I had to
That's such a good
learn
point.
that. I had to learn to set the space. Now I have a space where I actually don't have guest rooms in my home, because my husband and I both work from home. And so each of our guest rooms are offices.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about that sometimes, because my sister-in-law was here last weekend. I'm like, did you want to sleep in the screen room? I can make the futon, and I have like this house that has bedrooms, but no, they're not bedrooms. They're offices, because we need a door.
Right. Yeah. That's such a great point about the boundaries. Because I know that we run into, or I've run into that a lot, where it's just, I'm at home and I find myself working constantly on some things when I need to get stuff done. Yeah. And maybe I neglect some of the home stuff. Maybe I neglect some of the family stuff.
Right.
Do you run into that a lot? And how do we manage the boundaries? How do we get over those boundaries?
I think everyone has a different approach. I certainly do run into it. And I think people are all different, in the way that they manage their schedule, but we do need to find a way that works for each of us in the unique way that we are a person in the world. And, like my husband is very specific, and he keeps spreadsheets of everything. He's a researcher and a data analyst. And so he's always like, I'm going to log off my computer an hour early today, but I will work an extra hour later on tonight. He's very specific about how he goes about it. And also because of the respect for his employer too, there's that. But I'm a little different in that I might say, okay, I'm not going to work the afternoon, but I don't even actually maybe out loud say that. But then I'll know, oh, Sunday I'm working all afternoon because I have a deadline. And so for me, like, I stopped living in the world of Monday through Friday, and it became about what am I working on and how do I get that done? And the work was not the part that suffered for me until I learned how to balance it better. It was actually having the part where I wasn't working that suffered, like actually taking a vacation, because we still carry our computers with us, and I'll still work every single time we take a vacation.
Yeah. That's it's a powerful point. I think that's a lot of where the fear of some of the leaders that I've heard of came from. Like people who are sending their employees home. It's like, how do we keep track of if they're working or not? And nobody thought of the idea of like, well, what if they're working too hard?
Yeah, we don't stop working because we don't know how. Like how many times have I been like, I need to go prepare dinner, and then I'll try. Okay, I'll do it. Like I'll do it at 2:00. I'll chop everything at 2:00, and then I'll stop working, at 5:30, which normally would have been 4:30. But I work for myself, so I'm not keeping hours like that in my life anyway, because I don't work well like that.
Right.
My poor last employer, I was like, listen, if you want to hire me, I can't be the 9 to 5 person. I can definitely do 40 hours, but they probably won't be 9 to 5 Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
I'll probably be more than 40, but anyway. So for me though, it's like making sure that I would get things done. Cause like I might have, what happens to me very often, and this just happened because I did some chili recently. I will do all the chopping and then I won't end work early enough to go in there and put it all together and make it. And then we'll end up with takeout. Because I don't want to eat late,
Yeah. I'm guilty of that too. It's like, it's true. You have like these ideas, like wake up in the morning and like you look at your to-do list and you're like, yep, I can do all of this. And it's like your eyes are bigger than your stomach. And then it just doesn't happen.
I had to learn not to be too hard on myself too.
Yeah.
Like, let's look at what is being accomplished. And I had to become a little more strategic in planning out what am I working on getting done and what does done look like? Because maybe I have a bit more of a creative mind. And so maybe I'm just like making things bigger and adding on to it all the time. And so I had to learn to say, what am I working on? What does it look like when it's done? And then to honor that too, and to celebrate that and learn to establish these boundaries, which I don't know that I could ever give a talk on establishing boundaries at home. Because I'm not sure that I do well. I work all the time in a happy, good way, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, as long as you're fulfilled, right? And that's, what we're going for. So and I know that there's a lot of, this change happened to us rather quickly. I mean, a lot of people were sent home. We were working like at our dining room tables that like you were saying. And so obviously that injected a lot of fear into our lives. I mean, leaders were afraid for a lot of variety of reasons. People were afraid. And I know that now the quality of our meetings, often we gauge that on like whether we're on Zoom or not, or what have you. How do we make, or how do we offset that fear that we're having about going virtual?
I think it depends on what kind of fears we have, but I think such a big part of it again is just learning to manage the technology and being able to truly connect with people. And the biggest successes for me have just been when we've had fun together. I took a course that this local chocolatier was offering, and ahead of time, I went and picked up the chocolate. They made it available. And so we each had our own little box and they were numbered, and they gave us a little handout too. And then we got together on Zoom, and Zoom was just us on camera and talking, but we had this physical box of chocolates and our map that we were going through because they were all from different parts of the world. And we were talking about how you would pair them with different drinks or food and things. And we were having to like eat the little piece. And then in the chat, where we would talk about, what did you taste? It was amazing. So putting the Zoom in the background there and focusing on the chocolate and what we could sense from that. Yeah. Having fun interactions like that. But yeah, at the same time, you're using the tool in a way that's quite innovative is the biggest thing that's helping people lose any kind of fear or worry that they have about it. Because I think all of us are just wanting to be whatever version of normal might be for us. We just want to connect with each other in ways that aren't weird and awkward.
So true.
Can we do things that will make it not awkward? And so that's what I try to help people do. When I gather people in my classes and when I am helping them learn the tool, I try to have, fun things that help us connect. And then we look at the fun within the context of how that's helping our lives through technology. Because technology is a barrier, right? It's overwhelming and it can be a barrier. So how can we remove that? And then we can get to the other things, because other things could be causing the fear, right? Other things.
Right.
But I don't know that fear, you probably have that fear long before it was ever online.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's social fear. There's fear of social situations, all these kinds of things. And they kind of come up a little more on I think maybe they amplify when we change the platform we're on. But it sounds like what you're saying is don't make the platform the thing. Don't make Zoom the thing. Like maybe make the chocolate box the thing.
Yes.
Or make something else. Is that what I'm hearing? That
it
right?
Helps. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put that. For example, people ask me, how do I get my participants to come on camera? And we after having a big conversation of why they even want that, I understand why people want it. I do, because we want human connection. That's why.
Right.
The camera is an interesting, we could have probably a couple of hours on just that alone. But something that I've really been experimenting with of late is it's so easy to change these backgrounds now in all the tools. Yeah. And so I have people answer the question that I'm posing by changing the background. And what happens is it's actually not about you on your camera. I'm like, could you move over so I can see, you can see what do you collect? You can see what I collect right there. Right. So, I'm out of the way now, but you had to be on camera to reveal that. And this is not a virtual background, it's real life. But I'll do it with if the most recent example is taking an assessment, like maybe commonly the DISC assessment. And so I would send people the 4 results as virtual backgrounds and then change your virtual background to indicate your result. And now I have a visual, and I purposefully made all 4 of them different colors so that when you're looking at these Teams or Zoom or WebEx windows of a bunch of smiling, hopefully, faces, I now see the colors, and it's really easy for us to indicate who's in what category for that moment.
Wow. So that's powerful, because now you're using the tool as not just a platform on how we're going to see each other, but you're even integrating the platform into the talk, into the engagement. Yes. I love that part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's huge.
You do it in a networking event too, where I made several different backgrounds on where are you in your journey? Are you just beginning, testing the waters, ready to take off? And they're 3 different colors, and we change the background, and then I open up the breakout rooms, and people can network with who they'd like to network with. Just like if you were walking around a room in person and you had a name tag that indicated something about you, So now the virtual background is working like that, providing a visual, and it's fun too, Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. So in these past few years, I mean, obviously there's been a lot of changes, certainly in your industry and what you've been doing. And what have been the biggest lessons that you've learned since 2019, since 2020, when that whole shift started happening?
Lessons about living online and working online.
Yeah. Generally.
Some things never change. I mean, it's interesting, just even this week showing people about the annotation tools that are available. You're like, I didn't know those existed. Right. They've been having that same response since the 90s, Right. That's the lesson in that, I suppose, is just don't assume that people know everything about how to be online. Mm-hmm. I need to stop being surprised by that. I pause on that because it's so big. But again, the more that we can use these tools and get over it, it really is so. Learn the tech, use the tech, and get over it. Then you can get to all the other stuff that we have to do. We've been trying to help each other do to connect as human beings. But we keep blaming the technology. I gave a talk a couple of years ago. It was in 2021 at a conference called DevLearn. We did it online, this particular one. It's back to being in person now, but the name of the talk, they let me be a little cheeky. It was, the reason you hate your virtual training is because of what you're doing in your virtual training. I remember getting the feedback. They said, she was a little mean. I'm like, oh, I'm really not mean. I didn't mean it like that. But you hate that people arrive late, but you just opened it. Right at the top of the hour. And I had tech problems and now I'm late, or I know you're going to have tech problems. And so I don't want to be part of that. So I'm going to arrive late, so it's, manage that, right? You're mad that nobody's asking any questions, yet you lectured the entire time and never checked in with us. So we're not listening to you to have any questions, So it's a little cheeky. I don't mean to be mean, but I think we just don't realize we blame the technology for choices that we've made. And so if we can get back to what we know we need to do, I need to open things early and let people come and get situated. Would you ever just open the doors when you go in person to an event right at that moment that you need to start talking?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's such an important point. I mean, that we're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. It sounds like when we're trying to interpret everybody's engagement by trying to have a virtual meeting in the same way we'd have an in-person meeting.
Yeah.
There's
so
that.
And then we're comparing our virtual stuff to, I think, movies and TV and multimedia, where people do just watch things in a moment. And what goes into making all that work is so much production and so much performance ahead of time, so that there is that one button that you could press.
Yeah.
But it's not being in person, and it's not a movie. It's something else, and it needs more planning and a little more care than we maybe bring to it.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do we not make it so awkward? I mean, there's those awkward moments that we have, right? I mean, where it's like we talk over each other, we say, "I'm sorry," then there's an awkward silence, awkward pause. How do we avoid those awkward moments or live with them? Either way.
I have, the first part of it is learning the tech so that you know how to use it, right? Because otherwise you just sit there and talk and wonder what's happening. And then that in and of itself is awkward. Can you all see me? Awkward.
Right. You're on mute. You're on mute. Yeah.
Exactly. And then the second principle that I have is, what did I just say or do that I could have let you say or do? And how that will play out is, for example, if I just tell you the world according to me and then go, what questions do you have? Like, hey, guess what? I've got a process I'd like to share with you. Here's my process. Let me read it to you and tell you all my stories about it. Here's some pretty slides with it. You guys stay muted. Don't chat because it bothers me. I have a mission. I'm talking. And then at the end, okay, I'm ready. Who's ready to talk about all my great stuff? Nobody.
Yeah, right.
So what if we said, while let's use the chat, and I'm going to share a couple of visuals. And what if I told a brief story to set up the process? And then what if I showed the process after the very brief story that was very witty? And then you got to look at the process, and I said, why don't you circle parts or type your name next to parts that you'd like to speak more about or learn more about, or maybe you can relate to. And I have you be part of driving which way we go and deciding what you'd like to talk about. So I high level it. I let you deep dive and choose. And I'm paying attention to the chat. I'm paying attention to the annotation tools that I just learned about that I could use. And then from there, I'm listening to you. And now it's not me begging you to come off mute. It's me managing who's going to come off mute first, so that you could share your question and your story and how you relate to that. And then I can help guide you to how you could put that into practice for yourself. And then we segue into the next moment. So I'm letting it be more about the audience than about me, by capitalizing, if you will, on the tools, because I can't do that in person. I can't have you draw what you want or type your name on the areas of the handout that you want me to cover all in real time very easily. I have to have some kind of technology to do that. And it's pretty cool to do that.
Yeah, that is cool. That's an interesting perspective that I never really heard before, because, now in this new format, we have the ability to, the audience has the ability to share those things. That's really impactful.
And like, you gotta control it a little. You gotta be able to respond to it, but then you also have to let go within that control, let go, if you will. Like, another thing I like to do is I'll pull up the agenda. Like, I have a talk, the 5 keys for successful virtual training. And then I go, which key are you most interested in? Here's the 5. And then they vote. And then I go, we're going to go in the order of the most votes received. And I go, that doesn't mean you get to leave at this last one, though. Maybe I'll reverse the order and spend least amount of time on that one, whatever it is. But then I have to be prepared to speak out of order if I'm going to run that presentation, which I do. And I've color coded each of the 5 keys so that it's easy for me to hop around in the presentation. But I let them choose and drive what they want to spend the most amount of time on.
Yeah,
And
that's
how
powerful.
you can do that. You can shift, because sometimes people don't choose it because they know enough about it. And
Right.
so, you've got the handouts and you can still provide the resources, but spend the bulk of the discussion and the time together live on the things they want most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great advice. And as far as what kind of tools do you recommend that can help drive engagement? I mean, are there any specific tools that we're not using that we should be using more out there to help drive that engagement?
Do you mean like apps? Do you want to hear from me? Like, make sure you use this app. It's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I guess from somebody who's naive on the subject, or maybe I'm doing it the wrong way. It's let's get on a Zoom call, but is there any is there anything that's out there that we're just not that we're not using enough of to build that engagement?
Oh, there's so many, actually, Adam. In fact, as soon as I tell you this, by the time you release this, there'll be another one, and I'll call you and be like, wait, can you add? Right. There's so much tech. It's hard to keep up with it. But I'll tell you, like, if we were just to focus in on Zoom has so much cool stuff going on right now that's kind of buried in there. I just discovered this week, and I've been using Zoom every day for years. You can create advanced polls in Zoom. They call them advanced because they're beyond just choose multiple choice stuff. Mm-hmm. You can set up a multiple choice poll and then align that to a breakout room. And so you launch the poll, they answer, and then when you close the poll, it says, hey, I've created the rooms for you based on their answers. So if I wanted to group the D's, the I's, the S's, and the C's together, the tool has already done it for me. And
That's
then I
incredible.
can, give them an assignment, do that. And then I can reorg them. Okay, D's talk to the S's, I's talk to the C's. I'm mixing you up now. And there's another feature in there where you can broadcast your voice. And I always do it like I pretend like I'm the announcer at Rydell High from Greece. And so I press that button and I go, ding, ding, ding. Please change groups now.
That's
you have
great.
3 minutes remaining.
It.
I love it. And they come back and they're like, you were talking to us.
So this is God. Oh my gosh. I can see the implications. So good.
There's so many tools. I'm really excited about the Mentimeters and the Miros. I love Miro too. It's really fun the way you can move things around and create this endless board of activities. It's really cool. Mentimeter is really fun for just involving both an online and an in-person audience. And recently I discovered one called Aha Slides, and I like it because you can actually upload an image from your phone, and it will populate my slide right away.
Oh, wow.
Now, incredible. There's also fear in that a little bit because, like, what are they going to upload? But if you had them, like, my friend used it, and that's where I got this idea. She had them doing something at the tables. They were working with something like a Lego kind of thing. And then once they built it, they took a picture of their team's result, and then it populated on her slide.
Oh, wow.
And then that's the cool thing, too, I was in a really big, like, football-sized room at a conference last year. And, you always have that table that's way out, and you're like, table 25, what did you guys say? Well, that Aha slide, if you took the picture, you could press the picture and have it call that slide, and then they can pick up their phone, and they can basically FaceTime, and the FaceTime will appear on your slides.
Oh, wow.
And the audio, too. It's amazing to me. I can't wait to try that at the next conference. But there's all sorts of tools. And I would say that, like, looking at the tool you have, Teams has really fun stuff going on in it with translations. You can upload your slides now in Teams, and it will automatically translate it into another language.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's cool. That's really cool. Yeah, we primarily use Teams within our company. So we're very familiar with that. And yeah, no, that's there's so much that we just haven't even explored out there because we don't look at it. We use these tools, and we just kind of say, we have to be on it all day long. It's
boring. And so I like to go to other people's sessions because I don't think of that. Like, Miro's been out there for a while, and I saw it and it looks pretty, but I just haven't used it. And this week I've got a trainer that's showing me all this stuff. And now I'm like, you realize you just made me the biggest Miro fan, right?
Right.
So she's got us dragging little thumbs up icons to things and there's a funny face, myth or fact. And we'll take these little icons and we can move them all around. And I'm just sort of like, I'm obsessed with putting everything as a myth because the myth icon is very cute. So getting ideas from other people and looking at what your tool can actually do. The Microsoft Teams whiteboard has a pen that looks like glitter. They call it the glitter pen.
Oh, really?
I don't even
so
use
great.
Teams, but I download because I work for myself. But when I use it with my clients, I downloaded the app and I've drawn pictures that I include in my handouts using the glitter pen.
That's fantastic. I'm totally going to use that now.
Find the glitter pen. It's everybody's
find the glitter
assignment.
pen.
If you're a Teams user, find the glitter pen on your whiteboard.
That's so great. So how do we? And I guess the other question I would have in regard to this, I think one of the ways fear shows up now that we're having all of these online meetings. How do we get over that Zoom fatigue as the users? How do we get past that? Because I know a lot of us are just on it all day long and it's just kaboom.
It is overwhelming.
Yeah.
And they talk about the fatigue is actually staring into a video conference camera fatigue is more realistic. So, allowing people to turn off their cameras and taking breaks. And I know there's been a movement now with the way we schedule meetings to make sure that there's breaks in between meetings and start scheduling them for 40 minutes instead of an hour, and maybe start them at quarter after and let people go. And then you've got at least a 20-minute in between. So people need to take time and maybe even schedule in that time to be away from that screen. I'm doing a lot of things in my training where I'm having people go off camera for certain times and come back on when they're speaking. And then I'll actually ask them to do things off camera, like take notes for the next 5 minutes. We did it in our session together the other day, which is how we know each other, right? We were in a training together and she was having us take notes and look away from the camera at that point and just allowing people to be imperfect. We're not newscasters with makeup around us and producers. Presenters are, I suppose, but not the rest of us just going to work every day. So allow us to be normal and to go off camera at times.
That's such great advice, especially now. We come from an environment where many of us were working. We did have scheduled breaks. We had to take those 15-minute breaks. We had to take lunch. And a lot of times we're just not doing that anymore.
Right.
And I love the advice of scheduling those meetings for 40 minutes or what have you. That's really great. And I'd love to kind of spend these next few minutes just kind of getting to know a little bit on from your level. What piece of advice has been like the most impactful for you that you've learned throughout your career and your life?
In my whole life, advice. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about this actually in a presentation tomorrow. So this is kind of timely. The advice that, to make sure that you know your worth, that you're good enough. It's a big one.
Yes.
And what comes along with that is don't be jealous of other people because you have worth too. And I don't know if it was somebody who told me at some point, I don't remember who it was, but I've been practicing it. Whenever I feel any kind of envy or jealousy of what somebody else may be doing, I will use that as a cue or a gift. In the moment, it does not feel like a gift, but I try to actively not react because I've already reacted, and then I'll note it. A good friend of mine just released a book that I wish I would have written. I'm super jealous.
Those are the best books.
Dang it. And then and I go away and I'm like all mad for a day, and then I'm like, why am I mad? So the gift of it is, why am I mad? And then I start to examine that. And then I take the opportunity to really look at that and then go, well, what's missing from what I need? And then I can look at, okay, well, maybe I just need to do something that will make me feel good too. That's along those lines. Because obviously I got mad because I want that. So what can I do? My friend who wrote that book, she wrote it on virtual training and immersive learning. And so now I've got all these really cool ideas because I picked up her book. She's amazing. And I love the book. Cindy Huggett. Pick up her book, Facilitating in This Immersive World. It's amazing. And I've learned some things from her and I've started implementing them into new projects that I'm doing, including the speech I was telling you about that I'm writing. some of that augmented reality. And she's giving me ideas from that and the people in my circle. So now I'm just like, I'm obsessed with your book and I love that you wrote it because you gave me all these cool ideas for what I could do in my life. And so back to your original question, the advice of, knowing your worth. I've taken it and said, okay, know your worth, don't be jealous. And I'm like, okay, trying to learn my worth, always jealous. And, using those things and turning it into, okay, why am I like that? And what can I do that would be good?
Yeah.
I love the abundance mentality. I love supporting my friends that are doing things, but I mean, it doesn't come very easy.
Sure.
So
right.
That was the longest answer, but.
No, it was great. And what I love about it is it was authentic and vulnerable because, you're touching on something a lot of people experience. And I experienced this, which is, this feeling of that imperfection, and this desire to be perfect, and that growth happens with discomfort. And so that mindfulness of like leaning into it and knowing what's making you uncomfortable, that's such a huge path for growth.
It is. And then just trying to be like when people too, like, because I guess we get afraid that people are going to be mean to us or give us bad feedback. And that's probably coming from their own jealousy that they're not managing, know. And if I can remember that, everyone always says that, don't worry about people saying that, that's their own problem. But, but then to flip it around and go, well, that was me when I gave that, and I would never give the bad feedback. But the jealousy thing that happens is probably more about them than it is you. They always say that. Yeah. But it isn't what you feel or believe. Yeah. And so reworking it and just turning it around like the other side of it and saying, all right, I got to use this. I'm going to make an active effort. And it may take me a few days, Adam. Like I don't always go, I'm jealous and I'm really mad. Okay, I'll turn that around. Turn that smile upside down. It's usually a couple of days of whining to my husband and,
Oh, of course. Yeah. Our spouses are just the most wonderful people for putting up with us on those fronts.
I know.
I do the same. Well, I know you've written a couple of books. You're doing speaking and things like that too, which is amazing. What is next for you, Kassy? Where are you working on now?
The most fun thing that I'm working on right now, and I'd love to share it if your audience wants to try it out. You know how you can, in the world, go and take a quiz, like, which Harry Potter house do I belong to?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I love those.
You want to know, right?
Right.
I know.
Do you know? Which one do I belong to?
I don't know what you belong to. I know what I belong to. Do you know what you belong to?
I don't know. I think my kids have told me at one point, but I don't remember.
You need a new quiz. You need an updated quiz.
I do. That's right.
But I developed that answer for virtual training and virtual presenters. And so I'm like, what's your virtual training superpower?
Oh, wow.
And I have a quiz that will tell you that answer. And speaking of that story about the what my friend did to inspire me, that project I've been working on, the quiz, what I included in the quiz was some augmented reality that allows you to take a selfie with your superpower. And then you can sort of post that around and be proud of it, and people are really responding to that. And so I'll share that link with you if your audience would be interested in also finding out their superpower. The thing that happens besides the selfie is that you learn about what you do well when you are delivering an online session. And I also give you an activity from my book that is aligned to your style. So you can try a brand new activity and see how it feels for you to do that.
That's fantastic. And can people find, is that on your website as well?
Yes.
Excellent.
Under the resources. It'll be called the Virtual Training Quiz or the Superhero Quiz. We're still deciding on the best name. That's how new this is.
And that's at KassyConsulting.com. Is that right?
Correct.
That's right. Yeah. So look for that quiz there. And that kind of brings up what role is AI playing? I mean, I know this is new technology that we're seeing, and there's a lot of controversy around it currently. But is it playing a role within the virtual training space and things like that?
Learning and development is going wild. It primarily, I'm seeing it come out in so many ways, but right now we're seeing it in the world of ideation. And learning and development, we write so much. We write training materials and articles, and so getting started on that and. Like, for example, I was designing a new escape game for virtual training, and I was just sort of stuck. I want to send people out to a website and do this whole thing. And I got kind of stuck. So I went over to ChatGPT, which was available for me then. And I said, what would be a good escape, like a series of escape games, or what would be a good theme for an escape game on a website? And then it gave me, a bunch of ideas. And then I gave it follow-on questions to drive it more specifically, which is what, we all know it should do. But ideation is where we're seeing that, but with a whole lot of checks and balances in place.
Sure.
But for writing and for writers who need to get going on something is where I'm seeing most people using it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, it's a brand new technology, but it's so powerful. I'm hearing so much about it. It's just, it's making its way into this. And I know that it's going to, make an impact on the virtual training space too. And you have been you're a tremendous leader in this space. You are a driving force to bringing joy and fun and excitement and passion to, virtual training and our new virtual world. So thank you for doing what you're doing. And I think what that's doing is taking something that has been a source of fear for a lot of people and bringing it into the norm. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
Well, thank you for all that you do too, helping us
thank you.
Face that fear and turn it into something so positive.
Well, thank you. And and where can people find you? You have your website, KassyConsulting.com. Anywhere else people can find you?
I am fairly active on LinkedIn. That's my favorite place to post the latest and greatest things that are happening and all the different ideas that we keep sharing and figuring out. Because as technology changes, I make a video about it and I put we got to use this advanced polling thing. What are your ideas, group? So LinkedIn seems to be the primary place where that happens, along with my website,
Excellent.
as you mentioned.
Awesome. And LinkedIn is just your name, Kassy LaBorie?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And I hope to talk to you soon. And I can't wait to see where you go from here on the stage and in virtual life and everywhere in between. Thank you for joining me, Kassy. And to everyone else out there, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Flow Over Fear podcast. If you'd like to learn more about getting into flow and learn the foundations of flow, I have a free video series on my website at www.adamcliffordhill.com called The Foundations of Flow. Feel free to go there and download it and start your journey to rising above fear and achieving greater flow in your life. And if you like this episode, and I'm guessing you did if you stuck around for this long, then please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, and you will receive notifications when I have new interviews, new recaps, and new trainings that pop up on YouTube. Thanks again for joining us.